My daughter didn't invite me to her wedding. You look too poor for my friends. But the venue manager changed everything. I stood in the gravel parking lot holding a simple gift wrapped in brown paper. Inside was the quilt I spent 3 months sewing for my daughter, Lila. The wind blew hard across the countryside wedding venue, carrying the sound of music and laughter from the grand hall. My palms were sweaty as I walked toward the entrance, hoping to slip inside quietly. But a tall security guard stepped in front of me. "Name?" he asked. "Marianne Cole. I'm the mother of the bride." He checked his list, then frowned. "Sorry, ma'am, your name's not here. No entry." For a second, I thought he was joking. But his face didn't move. "This is my daughter's wedding," I whispered, shaking. "There must be some mistake." He looked away awkwardly. "I'm sorry." I felt my throat close. I took a step back, stunned when I heard a wave of cheers from the red carpet behind him. My eyes lifted toward the entrance. There they were. My ex-husband, Robert, walking proudly beside Lila in her white dress. She didn't even look my way. My heart cracked in two. And then I saw the mother-in-law, Vivian, smirking right at me. I froze, and someone else watched too, a man in a dark suit near the doors. I finally forced myself forward. My legs felt weak, but I couldn't leave, not without answers. When Lila reached the stairs, I called out, "Lila!" My voice was shaky, but loud enough. She flinched. Slowly, she turned. Her face stiffened when she saw me. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, stepping closer so the guests couldn't hear. "What am I doing here? I'm your mother. Why wasn't I invited?" Lila looked me over from head to toe, my simple dress, worn shoes, and cheap purse. Her cheeks turned red, not from love, but from shame. "Mom, I told you not to come. You look poor." "My friends are important people. You would embarrass me." Her words hit like hot iron. Around us, guests whispered behind their hands. Vivian stood a few feet away, smiling like she had won something. Robert didn't say a thing. He just guided Lila toward the entrance, ignoring me like I was nothing. I held the quilt tighter, blinking fast so tears wouldn't fall. Behind the crowd, I noticed the same man in the suit, watching quietly. The venue manager, I guessed. His eyes weren't cold like the others. He looked concerned. The manager approached as the guests disappeared inside. He was tall, calm, with tired but kind eyes. His name tag read, Ethan Ward, venue manager. "I'm sorry about what happened," he said softly. "Are you really her mother?" I nodded, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. He sighed. "Come with me for a moment." He gently guided me away from the door so no one would stare. "I can't let you inside. Your name's not on the list, and I can't break rules. But maybe stay close, just not inside yet." His voice didn't make me feel small. It felt like he understood something others didn't. He glanced back toward the main hall, then pulled a leather book from under his arm, the reservation ledger. As he flipped through the pages, his expression changed. His brow furrowed deeper and deeper. "That's odd," he murmured. "What is it?" I asked. He closed the book slowly. "Nothing I can say yet, but something about this booking doesn't add up." Before I could ask more, a server rushed over to call him inside. He held up a hand. "Stay near the back patio, please. I'll come find you." His tone told me this wasn't over. While I waited behind the hall, memories flooded. Memories I wished would stop hurting. I had raised Lila alone after Robert left me for Vivian. I remembered those early days, waking up before dawn to cook breakfast for Lila, then rushing to my job at the diner. At night, I cleaned offices until my feet ached, coming home to help her study. Every school trip, every doctor's visit, every late night cry, it was me. Vivian only entered Lila's life when she was 10. That's when Robert remarried into her wealthy world filled with fancy dinners and silk dresses. Suddenly, my simple home became too plain. My gifts became cheap. My hugs too emotional. Still, I paid for Lila's textbooks in college, her dorm bedding, even her first car. I thought love would win in the end. But standing outside her wedding today, I felt like someone had carved me out of her life completely. Miss Cole. I turned. Ethan stood in the doorway, looking at me with a strange expression. Did you say your name was Marianne Cole? Yes, I replied slowly. Why? He blinked hard, almost shocked. Wait, that's you? He whispered. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice like he was afraid someone would overhear. You don't remember me, do you? He asked gently. I shook my head. I'm sorry, You helped my mother, he said. Years ago. There was a storm. Our car broke down on Old Cedar Road. You owned a small diner then. You took us in, gave us soup, towels, and a place to stay until the rain stopped. A distant memory flickered. A soaked woman with a little boy wrapped in a blanket. I had forgotten, but he hadn't. My mother never forgot your kindness, Ethan said, his voice thick. She passed away 2 years ago, but she always told me, one day, repay that woman. I felt my breath catch. He straightened. So let me help you. You deserve better than what happened at that door. Ethan, I don't want to ruin anything, I whispered. You're not ruining anything, he said firmly. But you should see what's really happening here tonight. Before I could speak, he gently motioned for me to follow him toward a side hallway that led deeper into the venue. My heart pounded. Something told me this night was far from over. Ethan led me through a narrow service hallway lit by soft yellow lights. It smelled like fresh bread and roses. My steps were slow, unsure. I had never been backstage at a wedding before. There were carts filled with desserts, flower boxes, and servers rushing in and out of swinging doors. When we reached a quiet corner, Ethan stopped. You should know something, he said, pulling out the ledger again. Everything about this wedding looks fancy on the outside, but the payment wasn't made in full. What do you mean? I asked. He pulled out the ledger again. Vivian claimed she had special connections and talked her way into an early discount. She used your daughter's name for the signing, but something feels off. I stared at him, confused and worried. He lowered his voice. They forged a reference. The contact number they gave was fake. Before I could respond, loud laughter echoed from the nearby ballroom. I peeked through the crack of the door. Vivian stood in a glittering gown, surrounded by guests. I heard her say loudly, Well, of course Lila is perfect now. I raised her properly. Her real mother was never suitable. More laughter followed. People nodded like sheep. My face burned. My hands shook. Ethan glanced at me, whispered, You see? He gently. There's more here than you think. A spark lit in my chest. I stepped out from the hallway and into the edge of the ballroom. The lights were bright, casting a glow over the tables decorated with gold. I kept behind a pillar, just close enough to hear them, but far enough so no one would see me. Vivian's voice carried again. Well, of course Lila is perfect now. I raised her properly. Her real mother was never suitable. More laughter followed. People nodded like sheep. My face burned. My hands shook. Ethan glanced at me, whispered,
Marianne, what if I told you I could make things right without breaking any rules? I turned to him. What do you mean? He looked down at the contract in his hand. There's something in their paperwork they ignored, something important. Like what? He gave a small, almost secret smile. A clause they never bothered to read. My breath caught. A clause? I whispered. Exactly, he said, and it changes everything. The room buzzed with laughter again, but this time I didn't shrink. Something was shifting. Ethan motioned for me to follow him into a small office near the staff hallway. It was quiet inside, with papers stacked neatly and soft music playing from a speaker. He shut the door and placed the contract on the desk. Look here, he said, pointing to a paragraph buried halfway down the page. This clause is included in every luxury booking. It's rarely relevant, but when it is, well, it matters. I leaned closer, reading slowly. It said that if the final payment was signed under someone else's name or forged, the legal hosting rights would default to the signer's closest living relative. But Vivian used Leela's name. She forged it? Exactly. And since the bride can't host her own wedding, the rights go to her closest adult relative. I blinked. You mean me? He nodded. You're her mother. You're the rightful host. My knees nearly gave out. Ethan, I don't want to revenge. This isn't revenge, he said firmly. This is justice. They used your name, your daughter's name, and your sacrifices. They mocked you, lied to you, and pushed you out. He held out a small form. All you have to do is claim your rights. My hand shook as I touched the pen. He watched me carefully. Marianne, if you do this, everything changes. My heart pounded hard. But I signed. After I signed the document, Ethan stamped it with a silver seal from the venue. The sound of the stamp echoing in the room made my breath stop. Something heavy and important had just shifted. He looked up, smiling softly. It's official now. What happens next?
We informed the staff, he said, quietly, respectfully. No drama unless someone else creates it. My stomach twisted with nerves. Ethan, I don't want anyone hurt. No one will be hurt, he replied, but they will learn that they can't treat people like you as less. He opened the door and gestured for me to follow. We walked down the hallway toward a small staff room. A group of servers and coordinators stood inside, getting instructions from their team leader. Ethan stepped forward. Everyone, listen. Effective immediately, the event host has changed. He held out the updated contract. All instructions from Miss Marianne Cole are to be followed. The staff looked surprised, but respectful. A young server smiled at me. Congratulations, ma'am. My chest warmed with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Dignity. Ethan leaned toward me. You can go into the ballroom now, Marianne. You belong there more than anyone. I took a deep breath, then stepped inside. The ballroom glowed with soft lights and floating candles. Music drifted from a live band. Guests chatted and sipped their drinks, but their whispers grew louder as soon as they noticed me walking in. Some stared at my simple clothes. Others glanced between me and Vivian. A few looked confused, probably wondering how I had even gotten past security. But instead of shrinking, I lifted my chin. Ethan walked beside me, steady as a wall. We moved toward the center of the room, just as servers began switching signs on tables and adjusting seating charts, all under Ethan's direction. Vivian's private lounge was quietly reassigned to Event Host Suite, and a coordinator placed my name on it. I saw Vivian across the room. She stiffened,
her fake smile trembling. "What is she doing in here?" she hissed under her breath. I didn't answer. I just walked slowly through the room, taking in every detail I once had been denied. A wedding decorator pulled me aside. "Ma'am, you should know, the cake topper was changed by the mother-in-law. She insisted the bride and groom figures be replaced with one showing her." I stared at the small box he held. A quiet, steady feeling rose inside me. "Let's put things back where they belong," I said. And for the first time that day, I felt strong. The decorator guided me toward the tall cake, which stood on a round table covered in lace cloth. It was a towering creation, 5 layers, covered in white roses made of sugar. Guests gathered around it, taking pictures and admiring how perfect it was. But I only saw the topper. Instead of a bride and groom standing hand in hand like it should be, the small figures were of a woman who clearly resembled Vivian. Same hairstyle, same dress shape, holding a bouquet like she was the real star of the day. Lila's figure had been pushed aside, almost hidden behind it. The decorator whispered. She demanded it be changed, said the original looked too childish. I touched the edge of the cake table. Anger and sadness, mixing like a heavy knot inside my chest. "I have the original topper right here," the decorator said quietly, handing me a small velvet box. I opened it. Inside stood a sweet, simple bride and groom, just like the ones Lila used to draw as a child. Memories flashed. Little Lila sitting at our kitchen table drawing wedding dresses on scrap paper. She had always wanted a gentle, simple wedding, not this glittering circus. I took a deep breath. "We're putting the original back," I said. Ethan appeared beside me, giving a small, approving nod. And for the first time, I felt the wedding start to shift. The music softened as servers began preparing for the cake-cutting ceremony. Guests crowded closer, chatting and sipping their drinks. Vivian stood near the front, already posing as though she owned the moment. Ethan leaned toward the band leader and whispered something. The band gently faded the music down to silence. Confusion spread across the room. Then Ethan stepped forward with the microphone. "Good evening, everyone," he announced. "Before we continue, our event host has requested to say a few words." A wave of surprised gasps filled the room. People turned left and right, looking for Vivian. Instead, they saw me. I stepped forward slowly. The quilt I brought earlier was tucked over my arm. My heart hammered, but my face stayed calm. Ethan handed me the microphone with a steady nod. Vivian's smile dropped. She looked at Robert, who blinked, as if trying to understand what was happening. And Lila, my daughter. Her eyes widened. She walked toward me in her wedding dress, whispering fiercely, "Mom, what are you doing here? You can't be up here." But the crowd had already gone silent, waiting. I lifted the microphone, feeling every eye on me. "I'll keep this short," I said gently, but inside everything trembled. I looked out at the room, faces of strangers, friends of Robert, wealthy guests who didn't know me, and in the far corner, my daughter, clutching her bouquet with trembling fingers. I swallowed hard. I came here today because I thought weddings were about love, about family, about celebrating the people who helped us become who we are. A few heads tilted. Some guests leaned closer. I wasn't invited, but I still hoped to give my daughter a gift I made with care. A quilt, like the ones I used to make when she was little. Soft murmurs rippled through the room. I won't speak badly about anyone here, I said, letting my voice steady. But I will thank someone. A woman who taught me something. I turned my head toward Vivian. I taught her that money can buy decorations, dresses in fancy halls, but it cannot buy class. A gasp swept across the room. Vivian's eyes bulged. Robert's mouth fell open. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult anyone, but the message landed deeper than shouting ever could. I ended with, Lila, I love you. And I hope one day love means more to you than what other people think.
Then I handed Ethan the microphone. Ethan stepped forward, his expression calm but focused. He held up the event contract so everyone could see the gold seal shining under the lights. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, as venue manager, it's my duty to make sure everything here is done properly and truthfully. So, for transparency, there is something you should all know. Guests whispered anxiously. He opened the contract and cleared his throat. The official host of this event, the person who has full rights to the venue, staff, and schedule, is, he paused, eyes scanning the room, Miss Marianne Cole. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a sudden storm. People turned to stare at me, some with surprise, some with respect, others with confusion. Vivian stepped forward, her voice sharp. That's ridiculous. I organized everything. I handled the booking. Yes, but you forged a signature. You used the bride's name without proper authorization. Therefore, based on the contract and the clause concerning fraudulent booking, the host's identity defaults to the bride's closest living adult relative. He turned toward me. Miss Cole. My breath caught. Vivian shook her head wildly. No, this is nonsense. But the truth was already spreading through the room, and Vivian was losing control. Vivian lunged toward Ethan, grabbing for the contract. This is a mistake. You don't understand what you're doing. He pulled the papers back calmly. I understand perfectly, and the evidence of forgery is right here, including mismatched signatures. He placed a second sheet on the podium, a verification form comparing signatures. Even from where I stood, the difference was obvious. Guests whispered louder now, pulling out their phones, recording, murmuring things like, "Is that legal? She faked the signature? Poor bride's mother." Robert stormed up next, pointing a finger at Ethan. You set us up. You planned this from the beginning. No, sir. You set this up when you lied about your booking information. The room went dead silent. Vivian's face turned red, then pale, then red again. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. This is nonsense. I demand. But two security guards stepped forward at Ethan's signal. Mrs. Whitford, you and Mr. Cole must leave the premises for attempting to commit fraud. Your actions violated venue policy. Gasps echoed. Guests raised their phones higher, recording everything. Embarrassment and shock twisted across Vivian's painted face. And for the first time that night, Lila looked small and terrified. As her parents were escorted out, she turned to me with trembling lips. Mom, what have I done? The room buzzed with shocked whispers as security escorted Vivian and Robert toward the exit. Vivian kept shouting, her heels clicking hard against the polished floor. Robert tried to argue, but the guards didn't stop. Guests recorded everything, whispering things like, "They forged documents," and "I can't believe this happened at a wedding." Lila stood frozen near the cake table. Her bouquet shook in her hands. She stared at the doors as they slammed shut behind her father and in-law. The music had stopped. The lights felt too bright. Even the band looked uncomfortable. I didn't feel joy.
I didn't feel triumph. I felt tired. Lila slowly stepped toward me, tears filling her eyes. Mom, I I didn't know. I didn't know they did that. I didn't know it would happen like this. Her voice cracked as she looked down at her dress. Her perfect makeup was starting to smudge. She put her hand over her mouth, sobbing quietly. I turned away, not to punish her, but because I couldn't stand there any longer. The room, the whispering, the stares. It was too much. So I walked out of the hall, needing air. I didn't look back. The cool night air wrapped around me as I stepped outside. The sky was dark, but the venue lights glowed softly across the garden paths. I walked until I reached the wooden bench near the fountain. My legs shook, so I sat down and placed the quilt across my lap. The sounds of the wedding faded behind me. I let myself breathe, finally letting tears fall. Not angry tears, but the tired kind that come after holding everything in for too long. I loved my daughter. I always had. But love didn't erase hurt, and today felt like every wound from the past had been pulled open again. I touched the quilt's stitching with my fingers. Every patch told a memory. Birthday mornings, winter nights by the heater, late evenings after work when I still tried to sew something special for her. I wondered if she remembered any of it now. Footsteps approached softly. Marianne. I looked up. Ethan stood there, gentle and calm as ever. You left so fast. I just wanted to check on you. I didn't want to take pleasure in that, any of it. I know. That's what makes you different. He sat quietly beside me, letting the silence rest. Tonight had changed everything, but I didn't know how to feel yet. I wiped my eyes and managed a small breath. The cool air helped calm me. Ethan sat on the bench quietly, giving me space. He didn't push me to talk. He didn't rush me. He simply stayed. After a few minutes, he reached into his coat pocket. There's something you should see, he said softly. He handed me a small white envelope, old and slightly wrinkled. My name was written on the front in careful handwriting. My heart skipped. What is this? It's from my mother, Ethan said. She wrote it before she passed. I found it when I was sorting her things last year. He paused. I kept it with me because she told me to. I blinked, confused and curious. I opened the envelope with shaking fingers and unfolded the letter. Inside was a short message. If you ever meet Marianne Cole, please help her. She once gave us shelter when we had nowhere to go. She gave me hope when I felt lost. Return that kindness, Ethan. Do it with your whole heart. My eyes filled again, but this time with something warm. She remembered, I whispered. After all those years? Ethan nodded. She never forgot what you did, and neither did I. I held the letter against my chest, feeling its weight. Maybe this day wasn't just pain. Maybe it was something fate had planned long ago. I sat with the letter for a long moment, letting its words soak into me. My hands trembled, not from sadness, but from the strange, unexpected comfort it carried. Someone in this world had remembered my kindness. Someone had believed in me. Then I heard quick footsteps behind us. Mom! Lila's voice cracked through the night. She rushed down the steps, her dress brushing the ground. Her makeup was streaked with tears and her hair was coming undone. She looked nothing like the perfect bride she had been an hour ago. She looked like my little girl again, scared, messy, unsure. She stopped a few steps away, breathing hard. Mom, please don't leave. I'm so sorry. I didn't speak. She wiped her eyes desperately. Vivian told me you'd embarrass me. She told my clothes would make people laugh. She told me you didn't want to help with the wedding because you didn't care. Her voice broke. I believed her. I let her decide for me. I swallowed. Lila, you listened to lies because they were easier than the truth. She shook her head. No. I listened because I wanted to fit into her world. And now everything is ruined. I stepped closer. Then fix it. Not for me, not for them, but for yourself. She nodded slowly, crying again. Ethan placed a hand on my shoulder, and for the first time, I saw Lila truly regret. The next morning, everything from the wedding had already begun spreading online. Videos of Vivian being escorted out, clips of my speech, photos of me standing beside the cake, even recordings of Ethan reading the contract. My phone buzzed nonstop. People were posting comments like, "She handled it with so much class. I feel so bad for the mom." That speech was everything. I didn't reply to any messages. I just sat at my kitchen table, holding a warm cup of tea, trying to understand how everything had flipped so quickly. By noon, a local reporter called. "Ms. Cole, would you like to share your side of the story? People are fascinated by what happened." At first, I wanted to say no. I wasn't someone who liked attention. But then I thought of all the women who felt invisible, all the mothers pushed aside, all the people who had been told they weren't good enough. Maybe my voice could help them. So, I said yes. When I arrived at the studio, Ethan was waiting for me in the green room, smiling warmly. "You're going to do great. Just speak the truth." And on that morning show, I shared everything, not with anger, but with honesty and heart. People listened, and for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. The morning show aired my interview the next day. I had been nervous, but once the cameras turned on, the words just flowed out of me. I talked about being a single mother, about loving Lila, about wanting her to feel proud of me, even if I didn't have money or fancy clothes. I explained how I never planned for anything dramatic to happen at the wedding. I only wanted to bring a gift and see my daughter happy. The interviewer nodded and said, "You showed real grace. People feel moved by your strength." When the segment aired, the reaction was huge. My phone filled with messages from strangers, from old friends, even from people who used to avoid me. Some wrote, "You're an inspiration. Every mom deserves respect. We need more women like you." Clips of my speech and Ethan reading the contract spread even faster. Someone made a short video titled, "The Classiest Mother in the World." By lunchtime, millions had watched it. Of course, a few people posted rude comments, but I ignored them. Most were kind, supportive. At the venue, Ethan texted me, "You handled everything beautifully, Marianne. I'm proud of you." I read his message twice, feeling something warm in my chest. Maybe life wasn't falling apart. Maybe it was starting again. The studio invited me back for another short appearance the next week. This time, they wanted to talk about forgiveness and standing up for yourself. I agreed. Not because I wanted more attention, but because my story might help someone else. When I walked into the green room, Ethan was already waiting there. He looked relaxed, holding 2 cups of tea. "I guessed your favorite," he said. It was exactly right. During the segment, the host asked, "Do you feel angry at your daughter?" I shook my head. No. She made a mistake, and so have I in my life. What matters is whether we grow from it. The host smiled.
You speak with such kindness. I had to learn it, I said softly. Life teaches us, if we let it. After the show, people clapped for me in the hallway. Some even asked for photos. It felt strange, but also comforting. I had gone through so much pain. Now people saw me for who I really was. When we stepped outside, Ethan walked beside me. You know, he said, not many people could have handled yesterday with that level of grace. I didn't always feel graceful, I admitted. But you were, he said. You still are. We stood in the sunlight, quiet and calm, and for the first time in years, I felt proud of myself. 2 weeks after the interview, Leela started visiting me again. At first, she came with excuses. I was in the neighborhood, or I brought you some leftovers from the wedding dinner we didn't finish. But I knew she was trying to repair the space between us. One evening, she brought soup she had cooked herself. She sat at my kitchen table, stirring her spoon nervously. Mom, I've been thinking about everything I said to you. I watched her quietly. It wasn't just Vivian's influence, she admitted. I was embarrassed. I hated that my friends had rich, glamorous families. I felt small next to them. And I thought maybe they'd respect me more if I pretended I came from that world. She wiped her eyes. But that was wrong. You were always the one who cared for me. You did everything for me. Her voice shook. I'm sorry, Mom. Truly. The words healed something deep inside me. We talked for hours about childhood memories, her college years, the loneliness I felt, and the pressure she felt. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Then, near the end of the night, she took a deep breath. Mom, I'm pregnant. My breath caught. And I want you at the baby shower as the guest of honor. Tears filled my eyes. This time, she meant it. Months passed, and slowly the wounds from the wedding softened. Leela visited often, sometimes bringing her husband, who had apologized more than once. We weren't perfect, but we were rebuilding something honest. When the baby shower day arrived, I wore a simple blue dress and carried a small crocheted blanket I had made for the baby. As soon as I walked in, everyone cheered, "There she is!" People hugged me, thanking me for coming. It felt so different from the wedding, warm, gentle, real. Leela stood in the center of the room, glowing. Mom, come sit with me, she said, guiding me to a special chair decorated with ribbons. You're the guest of honor. My heart swelled. During the party, I noticed Ethan near the back of the room, talking with a few guests and helping set up food. Leela had invited him because she said he was there when everything fell apart. He should be here now that things are healing. I walked over and teased, "You fit in pretty well." He laughed. I've run events for years. Old habit. We ended up talking for a long time, laughing at small things. When the music started playing, he held out his hand. "Want to dance?" I nodded, and we danced slowly under the soft lights. Pain turned into peace, and peace felt like a second chance. A year later, everything had changed again, but this time for the better. Ethan and I had known close, almost without noticing. We spent time together every week, walking in parks, sharing meals, talking about work and dreams. One afternoon, he looked at me and said, "You know, with your kindness and my planning skills, we'd make a great team." I smiled. "A team for what?" He said, "For this," handing me a folder. Inside were plans for a small wedding venue. Nothing huge or fancy,
Just warm, welcoming, and honest. A place for people who wanted beauty without the pressure of perfection. He called it heartfelt weddings for real people. I felt tears gather as I looked through it. Ethan, this is beautiful. He said, we'd run it together if you want. I said yes. On opening day, the very first bride who walked in wasn't fancy or rich. She wore simple shoes and clutched a folder of ideas nervously. She reminded me of myself long ago, hopeful, unsure, but full of heart. I greeted her with a warm smile. I remind me of someone I once knew. Let's make your day special. She smiled back relieved, and in that moment, I realized something. Life had come full circle, not through revenge, but through healing, dignity, and choosing kindness every time.